The space above Talus Prime erupted into chaos. 17 human ships against 37 Krell warships. The odds were still heavily in the Krell's favor, but Warlord Grask felt his confidence waver as he watched the human vessels maneuver. They moved unlike any council species he had ever fought. No hesitation, no defensive formations. They accelerated directly toward his fleet, weapons already firing. All ships engage, Grask roared. Show these Deathworlders the price of defying the Krell Dominion. The two fleets collided in a storm of plasma fire and railgun slugs, but where the Krell fought as individuals, each ship seeking its own glory, the humans fought as a single organism. Their tactical network linked every vessel, sharing targeting data and coordinating attacks with mechanical precision. Captain Soman commanded the human fleet from the bridge of the Prosperity. The cargo hauler was never designed for combat, but her crew had welded armor plates to the hull and mounted every weapon they could find. Around her, captains of military vessels and converted civilian ships waited for orders. "Remember the plan," Soman said calmly, watching the tactical display. "We're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to survive long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Target their command ships. Cut off their coordination. Make them fight as individuals instead of a fleet." "Understood," came the chorus of responses. The human ship split into 4 groups, each targeting a different section of the Krell formation. They moved erratically, making themselves harder to hit, closing to point-blank range where human weapons were most effective. It was controlled chaos, and the Krell had no idea how to respond. "They're everywhere," one of Grask's subcommanders reported. "We cannot lock on to them." "Then fire anyway. Overwhelm them with volume." But the Krell's superior numbers became a disadvantage in the close-quarters battle. Their shots missed human ships and hit their own vessels. Confusion spread through their ranks as friendly fire casualties mounted. On the Prosperity, Soman watched a Krell heavy cruiser line up for a broadside against one of the smaller human ships. "All vessels focus fire on target designated Krell 7 now." 6 human ships turned their weapons on the cruiser simultaneously. The concentrated firepower was devastating. The cruiser's shields collapsed, its hull ruptured, and it began a slow tumbling descent toward the planet's atmosphere. "First blood to us," someone cheered on the tactical net. "Stay focused," Soman ordered. "We've barely scratched them," she was right. Despite their losses, the Krell still had overwhelming firepower. A human frigate took a direct hit, its reactor exploding in a brilliant flash. The converted civilian ship Horizon broke apart under sustained plasma fire, escape pods scattering like seeds. On the surface, Daehyun watched the battle through the command center's sensors. "Hyunwoo, can you get the Indomitable's weapons integrated into the fleet network?" "Already done, Captain. We might not be able to fly, but we can still shoot. Targeting solutions are being shared with the fleet now." "Good, then let's help them out. Target any Krell ship that comes within range." The Indomitable's main guns opened fire, lancing up into orbit. A Krell destroyer attempting to break away from the main battle and bombard the surface took a railgun slug through its engines. The ship went dark, tumbling helplessly. Aboard Grask's flagship, the warlord stared at his displays in growing disbelief. He was still winning. He had more ships, more firepower. But the humans were fighting with a ferocity he had never encountered. They didn't retreat when damaged. They didn't surrender when outnumbered. When one of their ships was crippled, its crew would aim it at the nearest Krell vessel and ram it, sacrificing themselves to take out an enemy. "What are these creatures?" his tactical officer whispered. "They are Deathworlders," Grask said slowly. "They evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. They learned to fight, to survive, to never give up." He paused, watching another human ship explode. "They are what we would be if we had ever faced real adversity." The battle raged for 2 hours. By then, both fleets were bloodied. The humans had lost 6 ships, with 5 more heavily damaged. But the Krell had lost 12 vessels, including 3 heavy cruisers. More importantly, their formation had collapsed completely. Ships fought individually, commanders issuing contradictory orders, confusion reigning. Then the sensors detected new arrivals. "Faster than light signatures," Minji reported from the surface command center. "Lots of them." I'm reading. "Captain, there are 63 ships incoming. They're broadcasting council identification codes." Daehyun felt his heart sink. "The council is finally getting involved?" "No, sir, these ships aren't from council worlds. They're from species the Krell conquered. The signatures match ships from the Velen, The Taraxis, the Helian Collective, all the species the Krell subjugated, they're coming to fight. On Grask's flagship, the same readings appeared. His tactical officer looked up in horror. Warlord, the conquered species are rebelling. They've assembled a fleet. How? They had no military vessels. They're using cargo ships, transports, anything that can fly. And they're armed with human weapons. Grask understood then. The humans had not just been fighting here. They had been broadcasting every moment of the battle across the galaxy. Every council species, every conquered people had watched as humanity stood against the Krell. And now, inspired by that example, they were rising up. The 63 ships were indeed a ragtag collection. Most were civilian vessels hastily converted for combat, crewed by people who had never fought before. But they had something the Krell had taken from them long ago. They had hope. Leading them was Lyra, the Velan that Daehyun's crew had rescued. She stood on the bridge of a converted transport, her compound eyes reflecting the stars. This is Lyra of the Velan Free Fleet to all vessels. The humans showed us that the Krell can be beaten. They showed us that we don't have to live in fear. Today we take back our freedom. The newly arrived fleet swept into battle. They lacked experience and proper weapons, but they had numbers and desperation. Krell ships found themselves surrounded, overwhelmed by sheer volume of fire. Grask watched his fleet crumbling and made a decision that no Krell commander had made in living memory. All ships prepare to retreat. Warlord, his second-in-command, stared at him in shock. We do not retreat. We have never retreated. Then today we learn. Grask stood from his throne looking at the carnage on the displays. The humans have taught the galaxy something we hoped they would never learn. They have shown them that we can be beaten. If we stay, we will be destroyed. And if the Krell Dominion falls here, our empire falls everywhere. He opened a channel to all ships. This is Warlord Grask. All vessels withdraw from the system immediately. This battle is over. No! One of his captains protested. We can still win. Winning is not the same as surviving, Grask said quietly. Retreat, now! The Krell fleet turned and fled, jumping to faster-than-light travel in a disorganized route. The conquered species ships fired after them until they were gone. Then slowly the reality of what had happened sank in. They had won. On the surface, Daehyun's crew erupted in cheers. Marines hugged each other. Velan resistance fighters danced. Even Minji, normally so composed, had tears running down her face. We did it, she whispered.
We actually did it. Daehyun nodded, too exhausted to speak.
Around him, the command center buzzed with celebration, but he could only think about the price. 4 Marines dead in the ground assault, 6 ships destroyed in orbit, with hundreds more casualties among the human fleet and the newly arrived forces. Tyran approached him, his insectoid features unreadable to human eyes, but his voice full of emotion. Captain Daehyun, my people owe you a debt we can never repay. You came when no one else would. You fought when fighting seemed impossible. You gave us back our freedom. We just did what anyone should do, Daehyun said. No. Terran gestured to the window, where the Krell fleet had been. No one does what you did. The council species have lived in peace for so long they forgot how to fight for anything. You remembered, and you reminded the rest of us. Over the next hours, the various fleets gathered in orbit. Captain Selman's voice came through on the communication channel, exhausted but triumphant. Daehyun, you crazy bastard. You actually pulled it off. We pulled it off, Selman. You arrived at exactly the right moment. We pushed our engines past their safety limits to get here. Half my crew thought we were going to explode. But we weren't going to let you face the Krell alone. Thank you for everything. 3 days later, a much larger council fleet arrived, led by Representative Veshna. This time she did not come to judge or condemn. She came to witness Daehyun met her on neutral ground, a repaired landing platform on Talus Prime's surface. Behind him stood his crew, battered but unbroken. Behind her stood other council representatives, their expressions a mix of awe and uncertainty. Captain Daehyun, Veshna said formally, the council has debated at length about your actions. You violated our laws. You started a conflict that could spread across the galaxy. You showed a level of violence that troubles many of our members. I understand, Daehyun said simply. But Veshna's crystalline form shimmered. We also cannot deny the results. The Krell have retreated. The Velan are free. And 17 other species have risen up to reclaim their independence. Before Thros could recover, 3 Marines opened fire. Their concentrated shots finally penned the Council fleet arrived first, not to help, but to observe and judge. 3 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel high above Talos Prime, their hulls marked with the symbols of Galactic Council authority. They were sleek, beautiful vessels designed more for diplomacy than combat. On the lead ship's bridge stood Representative Veshna, a tall crystalline being whose body refracted light into rainbow patterns. She watched the tactical displays with growing horror. The human ship Indomitable sat on the planet's surface, clearly damaged. The Krell fleet maintained orbit, but several of their ships showed signs of battle damage, and the planet itself bore the scars of orbital bombardment. "Get me a communication channel with the human captain," Veshna ordered, her crystalline voice chiming like bells. Immediately. On the surface, Daehyun stood in the captured command center, exhausted beyond measure. His uniform was torn and bloodstained. He had not slept in 48 hours. Around him, his crew worked to fortify their position and tend to their wounded. 4 Marines had died in the assault on the command center. Their bodies lay in the corner, covered respectfully. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from a council vessel," Minji reported. "It's Representative Veshna herself." "Put her through." The holographic display flickered to life, showing the crystalline alien's stern features. "Captain Daehyun, you are hereby ordered to stand down and await council authority. You have violated 17 interstellar treaties by engaging in unauthorized military action." Daehyun stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a bitter sound with no humor in it. "Stand down? Representative, where exactly were you when the Velen were crying for help? Where was the council when the Krell were bombing cities full of civilians?" "The council was following proper protocol," Veshna said stiffly. "Military intervention requires a full vote and assessment period. We cannot simply rush into conflicts without understanding all perspectives." "Perspectives?" Daehyun's voice rose. "What perspectives?" "The Krell were committing genocide. There's no perspective that justifies that. You do not understand. The Council species have learned that violence only breeds more violence. We believe in negotiation and finding peaceful solutions." "And how's that working out?" Daehyun gestured at the window at the burning city beyond. "The Krell have conquered 17 systems. How many more before the Council stops talking and starts doing something?" Veshna's form shimmered with agitation. "Captain, you come from a death world. Your species evolved in violence and conflict. You cannot understand how civilized species handle these matters." "Civilized?" Daehyun's voice dropped to something dangerous. "You think letting innocent people die because you're afraid to fight is civilized? You think hiding behind protocols while murderers do whatever they want is civilized? We prefer survival to glory. Better to live as a subject species than to die as a free one." "No," Daehyun said firmly. "No, it's not better. You know what makes life worth living? Freedom. Dignity. The knowledge that you stood up for what was right, even when it was hard. Your council has forgotten that." Before Veshna could respond, another alarm sounded. Minji looked up from her console, her face pale. "Captain, the Krell reinforcements are arriving. 37 ships just entered the system." On her own ship, Veshna saw the same readings. Her crew began chattering nervously. "We must withdraw," her second-in-command said. "We cannot possibly face such a fleet." "Agreed. Set course for the edge of the system." Veshna looked at Daehyun one last time. "Captain, I am ordering you to evacuate your people. The Council will not risk war with the Krell over this incident. You have done all you can. Leave while you still can." "No," Daehyun said simply. "That is not a request, Captain. It is an order from the Galactic Council. Then the Galactic Council can file a complaint. I'm not leaving these people." Daehyun cut the transmission. Minji looked at him. "Sir, she's right about one thing. We can't fight that fleet. Even if the Indomitable was fully operational, we'd be massively outgunned." "I know." Daehyun pulled up the tactical display, studying the approaching Krell armada. 37 ships, against his one grounded vessel and whatever makeshift defenses they had managed to set up. The math was not in their favor. Terran entered the command center, his carapace still scarred and dented from the recent fighting. With him were a dozen other Vallon, representatives from the surviving colonies. "Captain Daehyun," the resistance leader said formally, "my people wish to thank you. Because of your actions, thousands of Vallon are still alive. We know you cannot defeat the Krell fleet that approaches. We know you will likely die defending us. But we want you to know that your sacrifice will be remembered. We will tell our children's children about the humans who came when no one else would. Daehyun felt a lump in his throat. Terran, we're not dead yet. But surely you must retreat. Even your council representative says you cannot win. Probably not, Daehyun admitted. But here's the thing about humans. We're really bad at knowing when to quit. He turned to Minji. That message you sent out requesting assistance. Any response? Nothing from council forces. They're all pulling back to defensive positions. Minji paused, then her eyes widened. Wait, I'm getting something. Multiple signals. Human signatures. Captain, there are ships coming. A lot of ships. What? How many? 17 human vessels. A mix of military and civilian. They're still hours away, but they're coming. And sir, they're broadcasting a message for you. The message played, a voice Daehyun recognized as Captain Soman from the cargo hauler Prosperity. Daehyun, we heard your transmission. We heard what you're doing out there. The whole human fleet heard it. You stood up to the Krell when no one else would. You protected people who couldn't protect themselves. Well, we're not going to let you face them alone. We're coming. And we're bringing everyone who could reach you in time. See you soon. Daehyun felt something he hadn't felt in days. Hope. Hyunwoo. Status on the Indomitable. The engineer's voice came through, tired but determined. Still can't fly, but I've got the main weapons back online. And I've been working on something else. You know how humans have this tendency to strap explosives to everything? Well, I've been planting charges all over the valley. If the Krell land troops, we can give them a very warm welcome. Good work. Sora, how are the wounded? Stable, Captain. We lost 4 in the assault, but everyone else should make it if we can get them proper medical care. 4 dead. Daehyun thought about their families back on Earth, about the letters he would have to write, but he also thought about the thousands of Velons still alive because of those 4. It was a terrible calculus trading lives, but it was better than the alternative of doing nothing. All personnel, this is the captain, he announced over the ship-wide channel. In a few hours, the largest Krell fleet ever assembled is going to arrive. They're coming to finish what they started and to punish us for daring to fight back. 17 human ships are racing to help us, but they won't arrive in time for the initial engagement. He paused, gathering his thoughts. That means we're going to face the Krell alone for at least an hour. We're going to take casualties. We might not survive. But I want you all to know something. What we did here matters. We showed the galaxy that the Krell can be fought. We proved that someone will stand up for the innocent. And even if we fall, that message will echo across every system. We are humans from Earth, and we do not abandon people who need help. Across the ship and in the command center, people stood straighter. Marines checked their weapons with renewed purpose. Velon resistance fighters looked at each other with something like wonder. These humans, these strange aliens from a death world, were willing to die for them. 3 hours later, the Krell fleet entered orbit. Warlord Grask sat on his command throne watching the planet below. His scouts had reported the situation. The human ship was grounded. The council observers had fled. It should be simple. Overwhelming force, total destruction, an example made, but something nagged at him. The humans had not tried to run. Even now, with certain death approaching, they held their position. Why? Send them a transmission, he ordered. On the surface, Daehyun received the call. Grask's reptilian features filled the screen, but there was something different in his expression. Caution, perhaps. Maybe even respect, human captain. You fought well. You have caused me more trouble than the last 5 species we conquered combined. But this is the end. I have brought my entire battle fleet. Surrender now, and I will grant you and your crew quick deaths. That's generous, Daehyun said dryly. But I have a counter-proposal. You leave this system immediately and we won't destroy your fleet. Grask's eyes widened, then he laughed. Destroy my fleet? You are either insane or stupid. You have 1 damaged ship against 37 of mine. 37 for now, Daehyun agreed. But more human ships are coming. And when they get here, they're going to do to your fleet what we did to your ground forces. They're going to show you what real warfare looks like. I have heard enough. Grask's expression hardened. All ships prepare to bombard the planet. I want the human position erased. No survivors. Daehyun closed the channel and looked at his crew. Well, here we go. All hands brace for impact. The Indomitable broke through Talus Prime's atmosphere, trailing fire and debris. Krell fighters swarmed around it like angry insects, but the human ship's point defense systems kept them at bay. Barely. Finding a landing zone, the helmsman said through gritted teeth. fighting the controls as the ship shuddered and groaned. There, that valley 3 kilometers from the Krell command center. "It's the best I can do, Captain. Put us down," Daehyun ordered. "Everyone brace for impact." The landing was less of a controlled descent and more of a barely managed crash. The Indomitable hit the ground hard, skidding across rocky terrain before finally coming to rest in a cloud of dust and smoke. Alarms blared throughout the ship. "Damage report," Daehyun said, picking himself up from where he had been thrown against his chair. Hyunwoo's voice came through, shaky, but alive. "Main engines are dead. Life support is functioning. Weapons are at 20%. Captain, we're not flying out of here. This ship is grounded until I can make major repairs, and that's going to take days we don't have." Daehyun had expected as much. "Then we dig in and hold our position. Minji, gather all combat personnel in the main cargo bay. Sora, make sure the Velan civilians are secure in the interior compartments." 20 minutes later, Daehyun stood before his crew in the cargo bay. 12 Marines in combat armor, 8 security officers, and a handful of volunteers from other departments. Not an army. "Not even close. I'm not going to sugarcoat this," he said. "Our ship is grounded. We're deep in enemy territory. The Krell have thousands of soldiers on this planet, and they know exactly where we are. The smart thing would be to hide in the ship and wait for rescue." He paused, looking at each face. "But while we're hiding, the Krell will continue killing the Velan. They'll complete their genocide, and then they'll come for us anyway. So I'm proposing something else. Something crazy." Minji stepped forward, activating a holographic map of the area. "The Krell command center is here, 3 kilometers northeast. It's coordinating the orbital bombardment and the ground forces. If we can take it out, we disrupt their entire operation." One of the Marines, a young woman named Jisoo, laughed incredulously. "Sir, with respect, we're talking about assaulting a fortified position with 24 people against an army." "That's not crazy, that's impossible." "You're right," Daehyun agreed. "By conventional tactics, it is impossible. But humans don't do conventional. We do guerrilla warfare. We do stealth. We do things the enemy doesn't expect." He pointed at the map. "The Krell are conquerors. They're used to overwhelming force, direct assaults, enemies who fight them head-on. They've never faced humans before." Another Marine spoke up. "What about the Velan? Do they have any forces we can work with?" "Good question, Minji." The tactical officer pulled up another display. "I've been in contact with a Velan named Terran. He's leading a resistance group, about 30 fighters. They've been doing hit-and-run attacks on Krell patrols, but they've suffered heavy casualties. They're willing to help us," Daehyun nodded. "Then here's the plan. We move at night. We avoid direct confrontation. We sabotage their supplies, their communications, their morale. We make them afraid, and when they're confused and scattered, we hit the command center with everything we have." He looked at his people. "I won't order anyone to come. This is volunteer only. If you want to stay and guard the ship, no one will think less of you." Not a single person moved toward the exit. Jisoo grinned. "Sir, if we're doing something crazy and impossible, I wouldn't miss it for the world." The others murmured agreement. Daehyun felt a surge of pride. This was why humanity had survived every challenge Earth threw at them. Not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because when things got impossible, they got stubborn. Night fell on Talus Prime, and the human strike team moved out. They met Terran and his fighters at a rendezvous point in the ruins of what had once been a beautiful city. The Velan resistance leader was smaller than Daehyun expected, his carapace scarred from many battles. "You truly came to help us," Terran said, wonder in his voice. "I did not believe it when I heard. No council species has ever fought for us before." "We're not most council species," Daehyun replied. "Show us where the Krell are weakest." What followed was a masterclass in asymmetric warfare. The humans taught the Velan tricks learned from centuries of human conflict: how to move silently through rubble, how to set ambushes, how to strike fast and disappear before the enemy could respond. Their first target was a Krell supply depot. 6 guards stood watch, confident in their strength. They never saw the attack coming. Silenced weapons dropped 4 of them before they could raise an alarm. The other 2 died in hand-to-hand combat, overwhelmed by coordinated attacks from multiple angles. The humans and Velan rigged the supplies with explosives, then melted back into the darkness. When the depot exploded an hour later, it took out 3 blocks and left the Krell scrambling to understand what happened. The second night, they poisoned a water treatment facility the Krell had taken over. Not enough to kill, but enough to make hundreds of soldiers sick. The third night, they destroyed a communication relay, cutting off an entire sector from command. With each attack, the Krell grew more paranoid and angry. Commander Thros, the ranking Krell officer on the ground, issued increasingly harsh orders. Patrols were doubled, then tripled. Civilians found outside after curfew were shot on sight. The brutality only made the Velon more willing to fight, swelling Terran's resistance with new volunteers. But the humans were doing more than just physical sabotage. Minji had brought psychological warfare to an art form. She hacked into Krell communication channels, broadcasting disturbing sounds, Earth predator calls, distorted music, whispers in the Krell language that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "What are you saying to them?" Terran asked, curious. Minji smiled darkly. "I'm telling them they're being hunted, that the Deathworlders are coming for them, that they should have stayed home." One night, a Krell patrol simply broke and ran, convinced they were being stalked by invisible monsters. They weren't entirely wrong. On the fifth night, Daehyun decided it was time for the main assault. His team had reduced the Krell garrison's effectiveness by at least 30%. Morale was low, communications were disrupted, and most importantly, they had drawn significant forces away from the command center to chase ghosts in the ruins. "This is it," he told his team, as they gathered in the darkness outside the command center. "Once we go in, there's no backing out. We take the center or we die trying." Jisoo checked her rifle. "Beats dying sitting around, sir." The command center was a converted Velon government building, now bristling with Krell weapons and guards. According to their intelligence, Commander Thros was inside with about 40 soldiers. The humans had 20 fighters. The Velon added another 30, though they were poorly armed and barely trained. "Remember," Daehyun said, "speed and surprise. We breach from 3 sides simultaneously, overwhelming force in the first 10 seconds. Don't give them time to organize a defense." They moved into position silently, 3 teams, each with a mix of humans and Velon. Daehyun led the main assault through the front entrance. Minji took a team through the underground maintenance tunnels. Jisoo and her Marines would rappel down from the roof. Daehyun counted down on his fingers. 3, 2, 1. Breaching charges blew the front doors into shrapnel. Flashbangs filled the entry hall with blinding light and deafening noise. The humans poured in, weapons firing with mechanical precision. The Krell guards, caught completely off guard, fell before they could draw their weapons. Inside, the command center descended into chaos. The Krell were individually stronger than humans, their scales acting as natural armor. But the humans fought with tactics honed through thousands of years of war. They worked in pairs, covering each other, moving through the building like a well-oiled machine. Minji's team came up from below, catching the Krell forces from behind. Jisoo's Marines dropped from above, securing the upper levels. The Velon fighters, inspired by human courage, fought with desperate ferocity. Daehyun moved through the corridors, his combat training serving him well. A Krell soldier twice his size charged him, roaring. Daehyun sidestepped, using the creature's momentum against it, sending it crashing into a wall. Before it could recover, 2 Marines finished it with precise shots. They found Commander Thros in the command center itself, desperately trying to call for reinforcements. He was massive, even for a Krell, his armor decorated with trophies from conquered worlds. "Human," Thros snarled, drawing a wicked-looking blade. "You think you have won? I have killed hundreds of warriors stronger than you." "Maybe," Daehyun said, raising his weapon. "But they weren't from Earth." Thros charged, fast despite his size. Daehyun dove aside, rolling and coming up firing. His shots bounced off Thros's armor, but they slowed him down. The Krell commander swung his blade, nearly taking Daehyun's head off. They fought through the command center, neither giving ground. Thros was stronger, but Daehyun was faster. More importantly, he was patient. He let Thros tire himself out, dodging and weaving, waiting for an opening. It came when Thros overextended on a thrust. Daehyun grabbed the blade arm, used his whole body weight as leverage, and threw the Krell commander off balance. The Krell fleet moved into attack formation with practiced ease. 18 warships arranged themselves in a pattern that had terrorized the galaxy for decades. They expected the human vessel to do what every other council species did when facing superior numbers. They expected retreat or perhaps a desperate plea for negotiation. They did not expect the Indomitable to accelerate directly toward them. "Captain, what are you doing?" Hyunwoo's voice cracked slightly over the comm. If we get that close, their weapons will tear us apart. Trust me, Daehyun replied, his eyes locked on the tactical display. Minji, I need you to target their lead destroyer. Wait for my mark. The distance closed rapidly. 5,000 kilometers. 4,000. 3,000. The Krell ships began firing, their plasma cannons lighting up the darkness of space. The Indomitable shields flared as they absorbed the impacts but held. Shields at 70%, Minji reported, her voice steady despite the ship shaking around them. Sir, we need to return fire or break off. Not yet, Daehyun muttered, watching the numbers tick down. 2,000 kilometers. 1,500. 1,000. Now. All weapons, fire! The Indomitable unleashed everything it had at point-blank range. Railguns fired solid slugs at incredible speeds, each one carrying enough kinetic energy to punch through armor like paper. Plasma torpedoes streaked forward, their warheads specifically designed to target reactor shielding. And mixed in with the conventional weapons were something special, something Hyunwoo had been working on in secret. Cyber warfare packages. Tiny drones that attached themselves to enemy hulls and began hacking into their systems. The lead Krell destroyer never had a chance. Its shields, designed to deflect long-range fire, couldn't handle the concentrated barrage at such close distance. The ship's hull ruptured in 3 places, atmosphere venting into space. Secondary explosions rippled along its length as the reactor lost containment. Target destroyed, Minji announced, a hint of amazement in her voice. The cyber packages are working. I'm getting access to their tactical network. Good. Upload false targeting data. Make them think we're in 3 places at once. Daehyun gripped his chair as the Indomitable dove passed the Krell formation. Helm, take us into the asteroid belt. Let's see how well they fly in tight spaces. On the Krell flagship, Warlord Grask stared at his displays in disbelief. One of his destroyers was gone. Simply gone. In 30 years of conquest, he had never lost a ship in the opening exchange of any battle. What happened? He roared at his crew. The humans, Lord. They attacked at minimal range. Our shields were not calibrated for such tactics. Then recalibrate them. All ships pursue. I want that human ship destroyed. But the Indomitable was already disappearing into Talus Prime's dense asteroid belt, a maze of rocks and ice that stretched for thousands of kilometers. The Krell fleet followed, confident in their superior numbers. Inside the asteroid field, Daehyun felt strangely calm. This was exactly where he wanted to be. Open space favored the bigger fleet, but here, in this chaotic environment, skill and cunning mattered more than raw firepower. Hyunwoo, tell me you've been busy, he said into the comm. The engineer's voice came back excited. Oh, I've been very busy, Captain. I've planted 47 mines throughout this sector. They're using minimal power, so the Krell sensors shouldn't detect them until it's too late. Perfect. Minji, plot me an escape route through the mines. Make sure we're nowhere near them when they go off. Already done. Sir. The Indomitable wove between asteroids, its smaller size and human pilot's reflexes allowing it to navigate the treacherous terrain. Behind them, the Krell fleet spread out, trying to surround their prey. 3 destroyers moved to cut off the human ship's escape route. They flew directly into the minefield. The explosions were spectacular. Hyunwoo had designed the mines to fragment, sending shrapnel in all directions. The first destroyer lost its engines and went tumbling into an asteroid. The second took damage across its entire port side, systems failing one by one. The third managed to raise its shields in time, but the blast still knocked it off course. 3 more damaged, Minji reported. The Krell are pulling back, reassessing. Don't give them time to think. Daehyun pointed at the tactical display. There, that heavy cruiser is isolated. Hit it now while it's alone. The Indomitable emerged from behind a massive asteroid, catching the Krell cruiser completely by surprise. At this range, Minji could target specific systems. She aimed for the ship's communication array, its sensor clusters, and finally its weapon batteries. The cruiser was left blind, deaf, and defenseless. Leave it, Daehyun ordered. It's no longer a threat. Find me the next target. Throughout the asteroid belt, the battle became a deadly game of hide and seek. The Krell had numbers, but the humans had something they had never encountered before. They had tactics born from thousands of years of warfare on Earth. Ambush, misdirection, psychological warfare. Hyunwoo started broadcasting false sensor readings, making the Krell think there were multiple human ships. Minji hacked into their communication frequencies, feeding them contradictory orders. Daehyun used the asteroids themselves as weapons, using precisely targeted shots to send massive rocks tumbling toward enemy vessels. But the Indomitable was suffering too. Hull breaches on multiple decks, shield generators working at only 40% efficiency. The crew was exhausted, running on adrenaline and determination. "Captain, I'm reading a distress beacon," Minji said suddenly. "It's coming from one of the Velen refugee ships. They're hiding in a crater on the far side of that large asteroid." Daehyun made a quick decision. "Change course. We're going to get them." "Sir, that will expose us to the Krell battle line," Minji warned. "I know. Do it anyway." The Indomitable broke from cover, racing across open space toward the asteroid. Immediately, 6 Krell ships opened fire. The bridge shook violently as plasma bolts hammered the shields. Warning klaxons blared throughout the ship. "Shields failing," someone shouted. "Almost there," Daehyun muttered, knuckles white on his armrests. Come on, They reached the asteroid and found the Velen ship wedged in a crater, its hull damaged and engines cold. It was a small transport designed for maybe 50 passengers. Through the view screen, Daehyun could see faces pressed against the windows, insectoid features twisted in fear and hope. "Sora, get a rescue team to the airlock. We're bringing them aboard." "On it, Captain." The rescue took 8 minutes. 8 minutes of the Indomitable taking punishment. Shields flickering and dying. Armor beginning to char under the Krell assault. But they got everyone aboard. 53 Velen civilians, including children. One of them, a female named Lyra, was brought to the bridge. She looked at Daehyun with her large compound eyes trembling. "You came," she whispered through the translator. "No one ever comes. The council always says to wait, to negotiate. But you came." "Of course we came," Daehyun said gently. "That's what you do when someone needs help." An explosion rocked the ship. Hyunwoo's voice came over the comm, strained. "Captain, we can't take much more of this. Main power is fluctuating. If we don't break off soon..." Daehyun looked at Lyra, at the hope in her alien features. Then he looked at his crew, seeing their exhaustion but also their determination. Finally, he looked at the tactical display, at the Krell fleet that still outnumbered them heavily. "All ships, this is Warlord Grask." A transmission came through. "Human vessel, you have fought well. Better than any species we have encountered. But you are beaten. Surrender now, and we will give you an honorable death. Continue and we will finish destroying Talus Prime. The choice is yours." The bridge was silent, waiting for Daehyun's response. He stood slowly, walking to the viewport. Below, Talus Prime turned peacefully, its cities still burning. Somewhere down there, millions of Velon waited to die, abandoned by a galaxy too afraid to fight. "Helm," Daehyun said quietly. "Take us down to the planet." "Sir?" The helmsman looked confused. "If they want to bombard the surface, they'll have to go through us. And while they're focused on us, I'm going to do something they won't expect." He turned to Minji. "Contact the Velen resistance if there is one. Tell them the humans are coming. Tell them to get ready because we're taking this fight to the ground." Lyra gasped. "You cannot. There are thousands of Krell soldiers on the surface. It would be suicide." Daehyun smiled grimly. "Maybe, but you know what humans are really good at? We're good at fighting when the odds are impossible. We're good at surviving when we should be dead. And most of all, we're really good at making bullies regret picking a fight." The Indomitable turned and dove toward the planet, trailing smoke and sparks but still flying. Behind them, the Krell fleet hesitated, confused by this suicidal maneuver. In his flagship, Grask felt something he had not experienced in decades. Uncertainty. These humans were not like other species. They did not think like them, did not fight like them. They were something new, something dangerous. For the first time since he began his campaign of conquest, Warlord Grask wondered if he had made a mistake. The bridge of the Indomitable hummed with quiet efficiency as Captain Daehyun reviewed the day's patrol reports. Outside the viewport, stars stretched into thin lines as the ship maintained its course along the Outer Rim territories. It was supposed to be a routine assignment, the kind that left crews bored and restless after weeks of seeing nothing but empty space. Daehyun was a tall man with sharp eyes that missed little. He had commanded the Indomitable for 3 years, and in that time they had encountered exactly 0 emergencies. The Galactic Council's territory was peaceful, almost unnaturally so. Sometimes he wondered if humanity had made a mistake joining this confederation of cautious aliens who seemed terrified of their own shadows. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," Minji announced from her station. The tactical officer's fingers danced across her console. her brow furrowed in concentration. It's a distress signal, but the transmission is breaking up badly. Daehyun straightened in his chair. Put it through. The speakers crackled to life. And what came through made everyone on the bridge freeze. Screaming, weapons fire, explosions. Then a voice, desperate and terrified, speaking in the Universal Translation Standard. This is Talos Prime Colony. Under attack. They don't stop. They don't take prisoners. Please, someone, anyone. They're killing everyone. The transmission dissolved into static, then silence. Get me a location, Daehyun ordered, his voice calm despite the ice forming in his stomach. Talos Prime, sir. It's a Velan colony about 6 light-years from here. Population roughly 2 million. Minji pulled up the data on the main screen. The Velan are registered as a peaceful species. They don't even have a military. Hyunwoo spoke up from engineering. Captain, I'm detecting massive energy signatures at those coordinates. Someone is bombarding the planet from orbit. Daehyun stood and walked to the viewport, his mind racing. 6 light-years. At maximum speed, they could be there in 4 hours. Has the council responded to this? Checking now, sir. Minji worked her console. Yes, they received the same distress call. The council is... They're voting on whether to send observers. Observers? Daehyun turned sharply. That colony is being massacred and they want to send observers? That's the protocol, sir. The council doesn't believe in military intervention without a full vote and assessment period. They're saying it could take 3 days. 3 days. Daehyun looked at the star map, at the tiny dot representing Talos Prime. In 3 days, there would be no one left to observe. He thought about his own family back on Earth, about his sister and her children. He imagined them crying out for help while bureaucrats debated and voted. Helm, set course for Talos Prime. Maximum speed. The bridge went quiet. Sora, the medical officer, looked up from her station. Captain, the council gave us specific orders to maintain our patrol route. If we divert without authorization... I know what the regulations say, Doctor. Daehyun's voice was steel, but I also know what's right. Those people are dying right now, and we're the only ones close enough to help. I'm not going to let them die because of paperwork. Minji smiled slightly. Course plotted, sir. All crew, prepare for combat acceleration. The Indomitable turned and leaped forward, stars blurring as the ship pushed its engines to their limits. Daehyun returned to his chair and activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is the captain. We're responding to a distress call from a colony under attack. I won't lie to you. We're going against council orders and we don't know what we're flying into, but people are dying, and we have the power to help them. So we're going to do exactly that. Battle stations. This is not a drill. Throughout the ship, crew members moved with purpose. Marines checked their weapons. Engineers prepped the ship's systems for combat. In the medical bay, Sora began preparing for casualties. Her hands steadied despite the nervousness she felt. 4 hours felt like 4 years. Daehyun spent the time reviewing everything they knew about the region. The Outer Rim was supposed to be safe, patrolled, and protected. Who would attack a defenseless colony? Approaching Talos Prime, the helmsman announced. Dropping out of faster than light in 30 seconds. Battle stations. Shields up. Weapons ready. Daehyun gripped the arms of his chair. Let's see what we're dealing with. The ship shuddered as it returned to normal space and the view screen filled with a sight that made everyone gasp. Talos Prime hung before them, beautiful and blue but scarred by fire. Entire continents were burning. Orbital platforms were debris, and circling the planet like hungry sharks were ships. Dozens of ships, identifying attackers, Minji said, her voice tight. They're Krell Dominion vessels. 6 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers, and, Captain, they're hunting refugee ships. The Velan are trying to evacuate, and the Krell are shooting them down. Daehyun watched as a small transport vessel tried to flee the planet's gravity well. 2 Krell fighters pursued it lazily, almost playfully, before destroying it with precise fire. There were no survivors, the Krell, Hyunwoo whispered. I've heard stories. They've conquered 17 systems in the last 20 years. No one stops them. That changes today, Daehyun stood. Minji, scan for any survivors we can reach. Hyunwoo, I need you to analyze those Krell ships. Find me their weaknesses. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Krell fleet, Minji reported. It's their commander. Put it through. The view screen changed, showing a massive reptilian creature. Its scales were dark red, its eyes yellow and cold. When it spoke, its voice was a rumbling growl. Human vessel, you have entered Krell Dominion territory. The Valan have been judged and found wanting. Their world is forfeit. Depart now or share their fate. Daehyun stepped forward, his expression hard. This is Captain Daehyun of Earth. The Velen are under Galactic Council protection. You are ordered to cease your attack and withdraw immediately. The Krell commander stared at him for a long moment, then did something unexpected. It laughed. The sound was horrible, like rocks grinding together. Humans. Yes, we know of you. The soft ones from the little blue world. You dare give orders to the Krell? We have destroyed species far stronger than yours. You will leave or we will add your bones to our collection. I don't think so, Daehyun said quietly. You want to know what makes humans different from the other council species? We grew up on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. We survived ice ages, predators, diseases, and each other. We learned something they never did. We learned how to fight. The Krell commander's eyes narrowed. Then you will die learning that fighting the Krell is futile. The transmission cut off. Minji looked at Daehyun. Sir, they're turning their fleet toward us. All weapons charging. Good, Daehyun said, settling back into his chair. Let's show them what a death world produces. All hands engage.